Welcome to Warhammer 40k 8th edition Battle Report 32, 2,000 points, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch versus Necrons. This will be the chapter-approved Eternal War mission, Dominate and Destroy. Let's take a quick look around the board at where the objective markers have been placed. Beginning with this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here next to a ruin. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here next to this crater. In this third 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here next to this ruin. On the other side of the board, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here next to this ruin. In this middle 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here next to this crater. And finally, in this 2 foot by 2 foot section, the objective marker has been placed right here in the middle of the board. For this battle report, the Necrons will have 8 command points, while the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will have 8 plus D3, thanks to Kairos Fateweaver being their warlord. And so here's the roll for the D3, and that symbol is a 6, so they will get plus 3 command points. So the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will have 11 command points available for this battle report, and the Necrons will have 8. Also, a reminder, since this is the chapter-approved Eternal War mission, Dominate and Destroy, we will not be using tactical objective cards for this battle, and instead, each army will score victory points based off of the number of objective markers that they hold at the end of each of their player turns, and at the end of the game, we will also be tallying up kill points. And so now we will roll for the random map deployment, and here's the roll. Getting a 4, which is Hammer and Anvil. So on a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying on the near side, and the Necrons will deploy on the far side. On a 4, 5, or 6, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin deploying on the far side, and the Necrons will deploy on the near side. So here's the roll. Getting a 2, so the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin to deploy on the near side, and the Necrons will deploy on the far side. On a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will begin to deploy first, and on a 4, 5, or 6, the Necrons will begin to deploy first. Getting a 4, and so the Necrons will begin to deploy first. We will be back after the deployment. The deployment is now finished. The Necrons began to deploy first, and they also finished deploying first, which means that they will get +1 to the roll-off for determining who goes first. Let's take a quick look around the board at where each army placed all of their units. Beginning with the Necron deployment, going from left to right from Tzeentch's perspective, we have a Ghost Ark with a squad of 10 Necron warriors embarked inside. Towards the back, we have a Night Scythe, and there is a squad of 10 Immortals, and the Necron Overlord, who is their warlord, have been placed on a Tomb World. The Cryptek, holding that objective marker. The second Ghost Ark, which also has a squad of 10 Necron warriors embarked inside. The second Night Scythe. The third squad of 10 Necron warriors holding the objective marker over here. And then moving up to the deployment line, we have the squad of 6 Canoptic Raids, the first Annihilation Barge, and finally the second Annihilation Barge. Moving over to the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch deployment, going from left to right from the Necron's perspective, we have the first Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings, the first squad of 6 Screamers, squad of 10 Pink Horrors holding the objective marker over here, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff, the Warlord Kairos Fateweaver, the second squad of 10 Pink Horrors. This squad has the Instrument and the Demonic Icon. The third squad of 10 Pink Horrors holding onto this objective marker, the second Demon Prince of Tzeentch with wings, and finally, the second squad of 6 Screamers. And of course, for a full overview of both armies with all war gear that they are bringing, please check out the pregame show that happened at the beginning of this group. The link will be in the description down below. So now for the roll-off to determine who will go first. The Necrons will be the gold and blue dice, Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will be the white dice, and the Necrons, of course, will have +1 to this roll. And so here's the roll. And so the Necrons rolled a 1, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch rolled a 6, which means that the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch will go first. However, this means that the Necrons will be able to attempt to seize the initiative, and they are looking for a 6, and they rolled a 6. So even though they failed the roll-off, Even with the +1, they managed to seize the initiative back. So let's go into Necrons, turn 1. Going into Necrons turn 1, a reminder that the Necrons have 8 command points available and the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 11 command points available. Going into the movement phase, this squad of Necron warriors sitting on this objective marker will remain still. The Cryptek sitting on this objective marker will also remain still. This Ghost Ark right here is going to move up a few inches into the crater, right to there. The second Ghost Ark is also going to move up the board just a few inches in order to get within 24-inch range of a few of the Tzeentch units. And it will finish its movement right there. Next, this squad of Canoptic Wraiths over here is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, rolling for 5 additional inches, getting up to 17 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement like so. And now the Necrons will use the stratagem Adaptive Subroutines for 1 command point, bringing them from 8 down to 7. Use this stratagem after a Canoptic unit from your army has advanced. That unit can still shoot and or charge this turn. And of course this will be used on the Canoptic Wraiths. The Silver Annihilation Barge is now going to move a few inches up the board to get within 24-inch range of the Tzeentch deployment line. And the Annihilation Barge is actually going to move up almost a full 12 inches in order to get within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker right here. Next, this Annihilation Barge will also move up the board up to 12 inches. And this Annihilation Barge will move right to there. Next, this Night Scythe is going to pivot up to 90 degrees to its right, and then it will move up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 60. And it will finish its movement right here. Finally, the other Night Scythe will also move up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 60. But it will mostly move straight up, maybe pivoting a little bit to its left or a little bit to its right in order to avoid being on top of a ruin or in conflict with a ruin. And it will finish its movement right here. Going into the shooting phase for Necrons turn 1, we will first have the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch activate the stratagem Warp Surge for 2 command points, bring them from 11 down to 9. Use this stratagem at the start of any phase, select a unit of demons. Until the end of that phase, you cannot re-roll saving throws for this unit, but its invulnerable save is improved by 1 to a maximum of 3 up. And this will be used on Kairos Fateweaver just in case the Necrons target him. And so we will begin with this Silver Annihilation Barge, which will fire its Twin Tesla Destructor into the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstav. And the Annihilation Barge will fire its Gauss Cannon into this squad of Pink Horrors, which are just within 24-inch range. Starting with the Gauss Cannon, 3 shots onto the Pink Horrors, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. So 1 Pink Horror will go down. Twin Tesla Destructor into the Lord of Change, hitting on 3s, with 6s activating Tesla, getting 5 hits, but thanks to 2 Tesla hits, getting 9 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 6 wounds. 6 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 3. So the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will fall from 16 starting wounds down to 13. And so now the Necrons are going to use the stratagem Methodical Destruction for 2 command points, bring them from 7 down to 5. Use this stratagem after a Sawtech unit from your army has inflicted an unsaved wound on an enemy unit. Add 1 to hit rolls for friendly Sawtech units that target the same enemy unit this phase. And the target of this stratagem, of course, will be the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. Next, this Annihilation Barge is going to fire everything that it has into the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. Starting with the Gauss Cannon, 3 shots hitting on 2s now, thanks to the stratagem, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, failing both. But because they are D3 damage apiece, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 9 down to 8. In order to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll, and so they will save 1. So just D3 wounds, and it will do just 1. So the Lord of Change will fall from 13 wounds down to 12. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 2s, and now 5s and 6s activate Tesla. Getting 7 hits with 1 Tesla for a total of 9 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s. And that was pretty awful. Getting 3 wounds. 3, 4 up and vulnerable saves. Failing all 3. So the Lord of Change will fall from 12 wounds down to 9. Next, this Night Scythe will fire everything that it has into the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. 8 shots from its 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 2s, getting 7 hits. But thanks to adding 1 to hit rolls, now 5s and 6s activate Tesla, and so now we have a total of 13 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 8 wounds. 8, 4 up and vulnerable saves, passing 4 and failing 4. So the Lord of Change will fall from 9 wounds down to 5. This Night Scythe is of course just out of range of the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, so this Night Scythe will instead fire everything that it has into this squad of pink horrors. 8 shots, hitting on 3s. With its 2 Tesla Destructors, getting 7 hits, and unfortunately no +1 to hit rolls against this target, so all those 5s do not activate Tesla, but there is still 6, so getting 9 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 2s, getting 6 wounds. 6, 4 up and vulnerable saves. Wow, passing 5, failing 1. So 1 regular pink horror will be killed off. This Black Ghost Arc is within 24-inch range of the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, and so it will fire everything that it has into the Lord of Change. 10 shots from the 2 Gauze Flare Arrays, hitting on 2s, getting 9 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 2 wounds. 2, 4 up and vulnerable saves, failing both. So this Lord of Change will fall from 5 wounds down to 3. Finally, this Ghost Arc will fire everything that it has into this squad of pink horrors. 10 shots from the 2 Gauze Flare Arrays, hitting on 3s, getting 5 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 3 means wounding on 3s, getting 3 wounds. 3, 4 up and vulnerable saves, passing 2 and failing 1. And so 1 more regular pink horror will go down. Going into the assault phase for Necrons turn 1, we have 1 charge to declare, which will be this squad of Canoptic Wraiths declaring a charge into this squad of 6 Screamers. No overwatch from the Screamers, so here's the charge distance, rolling 6 inches. And that will not be enough to make it in, so the Necrons are going to use 1 command point going from 5 down to 4 for a command reroll to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll. Rolling a 3, so it becomes a 7. So we have a slight issue here. 7 inches is enough for that front Canoptic Wraith, this one right here, to make it within an inch of the Screamers. And so normally there would be no problem for them to make it in. However, there is a crater there. And so normally you have to subtract 2 from your charge range, which means that they would have need to roll a 9 in order to make it into combat. But the Canoptic Wraiths have a special ability called Wraith Form, which allows them to move over models and terrain as if they were not there. So 1, does the wording move over models and terrain as if they were not there only apply to the movement phase? Or does that also mean when they are charging? And 2, would that mean that they get to ignore craters? And the problem is, I'm not quite sure, so please leave in the comments down below your thoughts on the matter. But I am going to interpret it for the purpose of this battle report that they do get to ignore that crater in the charge phase. So we will have a successful charge from the Canoptic Wraiths into the Screamers. And if that is not how it's supposed to be done, please let me know in the comments down below so that I don't make the same mistake in the next one. And if it is correct, please let me know in the comments down below to let me know that I did it correctly so that I don't have to question whether or not it's correct the next time it potentially pops up. So we have a successful charge. Also, just in case it is not the correct way to do that, I had the Canoptic Wraiths that would have needed to charge through the crater go around it completely, which meant they ended up here in the back. So technically no one actually had to charge through the crater, but I know that when it comes to charging, you're supposed to move as close as possible to the nearest enemy unit when you are charging. Closest enemy unit, closest enemy model, one of those two. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to charge through the crater if that would be the quickest way to the enemy, but just in case I had to move around towards the back, and because of that, there are most likely going to be at least one, if not two models that are not going to be able to attack this turn. But that's all for charges, so now going into the fight phase, we will have the Canoptic Rays pile in, and none of them are in base to base, so they will all be able to pile in closer, and then we will resolve the fight. And so they ended up like so. 3 Canoptic Rays are within an inch of a Screamer, 2 Canoptic Rays are within an inch of a friendly model who's within an inch of an enemy model, and 1 Canoptic Wraith in the back will not be able to attack this turn. So 5 models will be able to attack. 3 attacks apiece with their Vicious Claws means 15 attacks total onto the Screamers, hitting on 3s, getting 9 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s. Wow, that's a bad wound roll. 2 wounds out of 9 hits. 2 4-up and vulnerable saves, passing both, so the Screamers will take no damage. And now the Screamers will fight back. And the ones over on this edge piled in a little bit, so that now all 6 are able to fight. 3 attacks apiece, so 18 attacks total with their Lamprey Bites onto the Canoptic Wraiths, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, thanks to the Demon Prince. Getting 6 hits and 4 re-rolls. And here's the re-rolls. Getting 2 more hits for 8 hits total. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Getting 6 wounds. 6 3-up and vulnerable saves. Passing 5, failing 1. So the 1 Wraith in the back who is not fighting will fall from 3 starting wounds down to 1. And I had forgotten about consolidation, so I will go back a moment and have the Canoptic Wraiths consolidate a little bit. And now that the Wraiths have done their consolidation, now the Screamers will do theirs. So now everyone is definitely in a position to be able to fight. Going into the morale phase, this squad of Pink Horrors lost 3 models this turn, and they have a leadership of 7. However, thanks to Kairos Fateweaver being nearby, and him being a greater demon, they can use his leadership, which means it's impossible for them to fail. However, because they do have a demonic icon, if they roll a 1 for their morale check, they will get D6 models back. And so here's the roll, and they roll a 6, so nothing happens. At the end of Necron's turn 1, the Necrons are currently holding 3 objective markers, and so they score 3 victory points this turn. And so at the end of Necron's turn 1, we have a score of 3 victory points for the Necrons and 0 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 1, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 8 command points available, and the Necrons have 4 command points available. Going into the movement phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 1, this squad of Pink Horrors sitting on the objective marker will remain still. This squad of Pink Horrors sitting on the objective marker will also remain still. This injured squad of Pink Horrors will move up the board up to 6 inches, and they will also declare an advance. And here's their advance roll, rolling 1 additional inch, and they will get to add 1 thanks to their instrument. However, they would really like to get within 3 inches of the center of the objective marker in no man's land, so the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to spend 1 command point, going from 8 down to 7, for a command reroll to reroll the 1. And here's the reroll. And so now they get a 4-inch advance, plus 1 thanks to the instrument, so 5 inches of advance and up to 11 inches of total movement. And they will finish their movement like so, and they are now within 3 inches of the center of this objective marker. This squad of Screamers is now going to move up the board up to 16 inches, and they will finish their movement like so. Next, this Demon Prince is going to move up the board up to 12 inches, and he will also declare an advance. And here's his advance roll, rolling just 1 additional inch for up to 13 inches of total movement. And he will finish his movement right here on top of the ruin. Kairos Fateweaver is going to move up the board up to 12 inches. And he will finish his movement right here. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up the board just a couple of inches, over to here. And the Demon Prince is now just over an inch away from those Canoptic Wraiths. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is going to move up to 12 inches up the board. And he will finish his movement right here. Finally, this Lord of Change, who is now down to 3 wounds, is going to move up up to 6 inches to be closer to the Canoptic Wraiths, and he will finish his movement right there. Going into the Psychic phase, for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 1, they will begin by using the stratagem Locus of Conjuration for 2 command points, which will bring the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch from 7 down to 5. Use this stratagem at the start of your Psychic phase, select a Tzeentch demon character from your army until the end of the phase. You can reroll any failed Psychic tests for friendly Tzeentch demon units within 6 inches of that model. And the target of the stratagem will be the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, now that he's lost his Psychic test bonus since he's down to 3 wounds, and this will mean that the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will be able to take advantage of that. So we will begin with Kairos Fateweaver attempting to manifest Gaze of Fate, Flickering Flames, which will go onto this squad of Pink Horrors, and Smite, which will go onto this Night Scythe right in front of Kairos. And actually, we will come back to do Smite after we've resolved the Smites from the Pink Horrors because of the way that Smite works now, after the big FAQ. So, Gaze of Fate has a warp charge value of 6, and it goes off with an 8. So later this turn, Tzeentch will have 1 free dice reroll. Now for Flickering Flames, which has a warp charge value of 5, and he manifests that with an 8 as well, but of course adding +2 for the Psychic test bonus, so both of those actually passed with 10s. So now this squad of Pink Horrors are going to attempt to manifest Smite onto this squad of Canoptic Wraiths, and they only use 1 dice, so looking for a 5 or a 6, and they fail with a 4. This squad of Pink Horrors will not attempt to manifest Smite because since they have fewer than 10 Pink Horrors, it would only be able to do 1 mortal wound if it went off, and they would need to roll a 6 on 1 dice. So this squad of Pink Horrors will not attempt to manifest Smite. But this Demon Prince will, and it will go on to the Silver Night Scythe because that is the closest enemy unit within 18 inches and also visible. So Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and it fails with a 4. So now this Demon Prince will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Canoptic Wraiths, and Smite now has a warp charge value of 7, and it passes with a 7. D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 2 mortal wounds. So the 1 wounded Canoptic Wraith will be killed off, and then this Canoptic Wraith closest to the Demon Prince will fall from 3 starting wounds down to 2. So now Kairos Fateweaver will be able to attempt to manifest Smite onto the Black Night Scythe right in front of him. So Smite now has a warp charge value of 8, and it passes with a 9 thanks to a Psychic test bonus. D3 mortal wounds, and it will do 3 mortal wounds. So the Black Night Scythe will fall from 12 starting wounds down to 9. Next, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attempt to manifest Smite and Bolt of Change onto the Canoptic Wraiths. Beginning with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 9, and he gets +1 thanks to the Everstaff, so it will pass. And so it will do D3 mortal wounds, and it does 3 mortal wounds. So this wounded Canoptic Wraith loses its last 2 wounds and is killed off, and then this Canoptic Wraith right here will fall from 3 starting wounds down to 2. Bolt of Change has a warp charge value of 8, and it passes with an 8. D3 mortal wounds, causing 2 mortal wounds. So this wounded Canoptic Wraith is also killed off. Finally, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is going to attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto himself and Smite onto the Silver Annihilation Barge. Starting with Boon of Change, which has warp charge value of 7, and it passes with a 12 thanks to a Psychic test bonus. Now a D3 on the table, rolling a 4, which becomes a 2, which is Mystic Strength plus 1 Strength. So until the start of the next Chaos Demons of Tzeentch Psychic phase, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will have a base strength of 7 instead of 6. And now for Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 10, and it passes with a 10, thanks to a Psychic test bonus. D3 mortal wounds, causing just 1 mortal wound. So the Silver Annihilation Barge will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 7. Going into the shooting phase, for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 1, there is only 1 unit that needs to resolve a shooting attack, and that will be this squad of 7 Pink Horrors. All 7 are within 18-inch range into the Black Night Scythe, and they are assault weapons, so they can be shot even after advancing. 2 shots apiece for 14 shots total, hitting on 5s instead of 4s, but re-rolling 1s thanks to the Demon Prince, and that's a lot of 4s. Getting 4 hits and 1 re-roll. And here's the re-roll.
still failing to hit. Strength 3 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 6s, but adding 1 to wound rolls thanks to Flickering Flames, and so actually wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. No AP, so 1 3-up armor save, which passes. Going into the assault phase, we have multiple charges to declare. First and foremost is this squad of Screamers is going to declare charge into this Ghost Ark. Kairos Fateweaver is going to declare charge into the Black Knight Scythe. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstaff will declare charge into the Canoptic Wraiths. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch will also declare charge into the Canoptic Wraiths. And finally, the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will declare charge into the Silver Annihilation Barge. And we will begin with this Demon Prince of Tzeentch charging into the Canoptic Wraiths. There is no Overwatch. And so here's the charge range, rolling 5 inches. And so the Demon Prince is now locked in combat. Next, we will do the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, declaring a charge into the Canoptic Wraiths. Here's the charge range, and he is going through a crater, but rolling 10 inches, so more than enough. And this Lord of Change is now locked in combat. Next, we will resolve the charge from the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword into the Annihilation Barge. Starting with 3 shots from the Gauze Cannon, hitting on 6s, getting 1 hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on a 5 and failing to wound. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 6s, failing to hit. And here's the charge range. Getting 6 inches, he is charging through a crater, so subtracting 2, but 4 inches is more than enough. And he is now locked in combat like so. Next, we will do Kairos Fateweaver into the Night Scythe. 8 shots from the 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 6s. Getting 2 hits, but thanks to Tesla, actually getting 6 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 2 wounds, and 2 4-up invulnerable saves, failing both. But they are only 1 damage piece, so Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 16 starting wounds down to 14. And here's his charge range. Rolling 8 inches, subtracting 2 thanks to the crater, so 6 inches is more than enough. And Kairos Fateweaver is now locked in combat. So finally, we will now resolve the charge from the Screamers onto the Ghost Ark. 20 shots worth of Overwatch from the 2 Gauze Flare arrays, hitting on 6s, getting 2 cocked dice, so getting 2 hits, and here's the 2 rerolls from the cocked dice, getting 1 additional hit for 3 hits total. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, getting 1 wound, and 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. And here's their charge range. They are going through a crater, but rolling an 11, so 9 inches of charge is more than enough. And all of the Screamers are now in combat. As we can see, many have fallen over because the crater is creating a big wobbly model syndrome, and so all 6 are technically in base to hull with the Ghost Ark. So we will move them around as necessary, but they are all as close as possible to the Ghost Ark, and they are all touching it in a line. So going into the fight phase, we need to resolve Locus of Trickery, which we totally forgot to do in the last fight phase as well. So rolling 2 dice, take away the highest. So hit rolls of 3 will not count from the Necrons when they are targeting a Tzeentch demon unit that is either within 6 inches of a Tzeentch demon character or is a Tzeentch demon character. Now, luckily, the Necrons didn't do any damage to Tzeentch in the last fight phase of Necrons turn 1, so it didn't matter, but we did remember it this time. So hit rolls of 3 will not count. And also, just in case, Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are once again going to use the stratagem Warp Surge for 2 command points, bring them from 5 down to 3. And they are going to target the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery to buff his invulnerable save to a 3-up. So the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to begin with Kairos Fateweaver attacking the Night Scythe. 5 attack space with the Staff of Tomorrow onto the Night Scythe, hitting on 3s. Getting 4 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s. Getting 3 wounds, and so the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use their 1 reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll. Still failing to wound. -3 AP, so 3 6-up armor saves. Failing all 3. And they are D6 damage apiece, so 3 D6 damage. and that's 14 damage. So that will be enough to kill off the 9 wounds on the Night Scythe. Does it crash and burn on a 6? And it does not. So this Night Scythe will lose its final 9 wounds, and then it will be killed off and removed for first blood. And so now, Kairos Fate Weaver will consolidate up to 3 inches closer to the nearest enemy unit, right to there. So now the Necrons are going to use the stratagem counteroffensive for 2 command points, bring them from 4 down to 2. This stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged is fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with the next. And the Necrons will fight with their Canoptic Wraiths. One Canoptic Wraith will place his attacks onto the Lord of Change, and the other 2 will place their attacks onto the Screamers to try to wipe as many of them out as possible. So first, the one onto the Lord of Change. 3 attacks with Vicious Claws, hitting on 3s. And actually not hitting on 3s, but hitting on 4s, thanks to the Locus of Trickery, but getting 2 hits anyways. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. Thanks to Warp Surge, 1 3-up Invulnerable Save, which fails. But it's only a 2 damage weapon, and so the Lord of Change will fall from 3 wounds down to 1 and will survive. Now for 6 attacks onto the Screamers, hitting on 3s, and actually not hitting on 3s, and that makes a huge difference, getting only 2 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, failing to wound, so no Screamers are killed off. So now the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword will place his attacks onto the Annihilation Barge. 5 attacks with the Staff of Tzeentch, hitting on 2s, getting 4 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. Minus 2 AP, so 2 5-up armor saves, failing both. And they are 3 damage piece, so thanks to Quantum Shielding, on rolls of 1 or 2, they will be ignored. Failing both. So 6 damage will go through. So the Annihilation Barge will fall from 7 wounds down to 1 left. Now for these Screamers attacking the Ghost Ark. 18 attacks, hitting on 3s, on 4s. Screamers have a weapon skill of 4-up, so hitting on 4s, getting 7 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 4s, getting 3 wounds. Minus 3 AP, so no armor save for the Ghost Ark, but they are 2 damage piece, so Quantum Shielding can ignore on 1s, failing to ignore all, so 6 damage will go through. So this Ghost Ark will fall from 14 starting wounds down to 8. Next, the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery will attack the Canoptic Wraiths. 3 attacks with the Staff of Tzeentch, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to the Demon Prince, getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. But the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use 1 command point for a command reroll, going from 3 down to 2, since they haven't used 1 this fight phase, in order to reroll the 2. And here's the reroll. Getting a 3rd wound. 3 3-up Invulnerable Saves, passing 2 but failing 1. So this Canoptic Wraith right here will be removed. So now the Demon Prince will pile in and then fight. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, thanks to himself, getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. That's really bad. Getting 3 wounds. 3 3-up Invulnerable Saves, passing 1, failing 2, and they are 2 damage piece. But the damage cannot carry over, which means that only 1 Canoptic Wraith will be brought down. And now the Demon Prince will consolidate further, and this means that all of the charging units are done. So now the Screamers will pile in and fight, as that's the only Tzeentch unit that was already locked in combat at the beginning of the fight phase. And so now all 6 will be able to fight against the lone Canoptic Wraith. 18 attacks, hitting on 4s, rerolling 1s, getting 7 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, still failing to hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 5 wounds. 5 3-up Invulnerable Saves, passing 4 and failing 1. And it's only 2 damage apiece, so the Canoptic Wraith will survive, going from 3 starting wounds down to 1. And its wound will be placed all the way over here because it's too clustered where the model actually is. So now moving over to the Necron side, we will have this Ghost Ark place its attacks back onto the Screamers. 3 attacks base, hitting on 6s, failing to hit. And finally, this this Annihilation Barge, placing its attacks onto the Lord of Change. 3 attacks, hitting on 6s, failing to hit. So going into the morale phase, this squad of Canoptic Wraiths lost 5 models this turn, and they have a leadership of 10, which means they could fail on a 6. And so here's the morale check roll. They roll a 4, so they pass, and nothing happens.
And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch, turn 1, the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch are holding 3 objective markers and contesting the 4th, which means they will score 3 victory points this turn. And so at the end of Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch turn 1, we have a score of 4 victory points for the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch thanks to First Blood, and 3 victory points for the Necrons. Going into Necrons turn 2, a reminder that the Necrons have 2 command points available, and the Chaos Daemons of Tzeentch also have 2 command points available.
Going into the movement phase, for Necrons turn 2, this squad of Necron warriors sitting on the objective marker will remain still. The Cryptek sitting on this objective marker will also remain still. The Necrons will now use the stratagem Enhanced Invasion Beam for 1 command point, bringing them from 2 down to 1 left. Use this stratagem before you set up a unit from a Tomb World using the Invasion Beam ability of a Night Scythe from your army or the Eternity Gate ability of a Monolith from your army. You can set up 2 units from a Tomb World instead of 1. So both the Overlord and the squad of 10 Immortals will disembark from this Night Scythe. And they will disembark like so around the back of the base of the Night Scythe, with the Overlord over here at the edge of the line of Immortals and next to the Ghost Ark. So that now the Night Scythe will pivot up to 90 degrees to its left and fly up the board at least 20 inches, but no more than 60. And the Night Scythe will finish its movement like so. Now the Immortals are going to move up the board just a couple of inches in order to not be quite so clustered together. And they will finish like so. The Necron Overlord will move up to 5 inches up the board, right to there. This Ghost Ark will now have the squad of warriors inside disembark out the back. And because the crater that the Ghost Ark is sitting in will make for very wobbly models, we will also have the warriors move up to 5 inches at the same time. And so they will finish their disembarkation like so, with a little bit of movement just to make sure that they are not standing on the crater, making themselves wobbly. And so now the Ghost Ark will fall back out of combat with the Screamers, up to 12 inches since it is still at 8 wounds. And it will fall back right to there. And a reminder that because of the close combat, all 6 of these Screamers should be in a solid line along here, but because of the crater, they kept falling over except for these 3. So they are all in one solid line right here, even though it doesn't look like it. Next, the other Ghost Ark will have its squad of Necron warriors disembark out the front towards Kairos Fateweaver. And the squad of warriors will finish its disembarkation like so, and now they will move up the board just a couple of inches in order to be in a more coherent formation. And so they will finish their movement like so, making sure to stay over an inch away from any enemy models. Next, the Ghost Ark will remain still. This lone Canoptic Wraith will remain locked in combat. The Silver Annihilation Barge is going to fall back out of combat with the Lord of Change over to here in order to still be holding this objective marker. The Annihilation Barge is now over an inch away and out of combat, but still within 3 inches of the objective marker. And now the Black Annihilation Barge will move up the board to be right next to the Silver Annihilation Barge to also be within 3 inches of that objective marker, because that way they will be holding that objective marker and can score it, because they will have an advantage of 2 models versus just the 1 Lord of Change. And it will finish its movement like so that now both Annihilation Barges are holding the objective marker. So going into the shooting phase, we will begin with this Night Scythe, which will fire everything that it has into Kairos Fateweaver. 8 shots from the 2 Tesla Destructors, hitting on 3s, getting 5 hits, but the hit roll of a 6 activates Tesla for 7 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 3 wounds, 3 4-up and vulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 2. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 14 wounds down to 12. Next, the Silver Annihilation Barge will fire everything that it has into Kairos Fateweaver. Beginning with the Gauze Cannon, 3 shots hitting on 3s. threes. Getting 1 hit. Strength 6 versus toughness 7 means wounding on a 5, and it fails to wound. 8 shots from the twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 3s. And that was an absolutely awful roll, getting only 3 hits, no Tesla. Strength 7 versus toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 12 wounds down to 11. Now the Black Annihilation Barge will fire everything that he has into Kairos Fateweaver. 3 shots from the Gauze Cannon, hitting on 3s, getting 2 hits. Strength 6 versus toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which passes. 8 shots from the twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 3s. Once again, getting a bad hit roll, getting only 4 hits, no Tesla. Strength 7 versus toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 1 and failing 1. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 11 wounds down to 10. This squad of Immortals is going to fire everything that they have into the squad of Screamers in front of them. 20 shots with their Gauze Blasters, hitting on 3s, getting only 9 hits. Strength 5 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 3s, getting 5 wounds. 5 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 3, failing 2. And they are 1 damage apiece, and Screamers have 2 wounds apiece, so 1 Screamer is killed off, leaving 5 left in the squad. Now this squad of Warriors will fire everything that they have into the Screamers. 20 shots hitting on 3s, doing much better with 15 hits and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting a 16th hit. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, getting 9 wounds. 9 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 4 and failing 5. 1 damage apiece, so 2 Screamers are fully killed off, and then 1 more Screamer will fall from 2 wounds down to 1 left. Now this Ghost Ark will fire everything that it has in rapid fire range into the squad of Screamers. 20 shots hitting on 3s, getting 13 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 4s, getting 7 wounds. 7 4-up invulnerable saves, passing 3 and failing 4. So the wounded Screamer is finished off, 1 healthy Screamer is finished off, and the final Screamer is brought down from 2 wounds to 1 left. This squad of Warriors is going to fire everything that they have into Kairos Fateweaver. 20 shots hitting on 3s, getting 11 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 3 wounds. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, failing all 3. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 10 wounds down to 7. And now this Ghost Ark will fire everything that it has into Kairos Fateweaver. 20 shots hitting on 3s. And there is a cocked dice in there, so getting 11 hits and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting another hit for 12 hits total. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, once again getting 3 wounds. 3 4-up invulnerable saves, passing all 3. Finally, this squad of Warriors is all going to fire at full range into the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe. 10 shots hitting on 3s, getting 6 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which fails. So the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe will fall from 16 starting wounds down to 15. So going into the assault phase for Necrons turn 2, the Necrons are in a little bit of a pickle, because if they have this Overlord charge this lone Screamer, then Chaos Demons of Tzeentch can use their last 2 command points for counteroffensive after the Necron finishes his attacks, which would mean that the Lord of Change or the Screamers from on the other side could finish off the Canoptic Wraith before that lone Canoptic Wraith with 1 wound left can finish off the Lord of Change. So, in the assault phase, the Necrons are not going to declare any charges in order to guarantee that their Canoptic Wraith, who is already locked, gets to fight first and potentially can finish off the Lord of Change before the Lord of Change can fight back. So going right into the fight phase, we will have the Canoptic Wraith with 1 wound left place all of his attacks onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. But before the Canoptic Wraith can place his attacks, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are going to use the Stratagem Warp Surge for 2 command points, bring them from 2 down to 0, in order to buff the invulnerable save from that Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery to a 3-up. So 3 attacks from the Canoptic Wraith with its Vicious Claws onto the Lord of Change. 3 attacks hitting on 3s. Getting only 1 hit. Strength 6 versus Toughness 7, so wounding on a 5, and it fails to wound. But the Necrons are going to use their final command point, going from 1 down to 0, for a command reroll to reroll the 3. And here's the reroll, still rolling a 3, so it fails to wound. And so now the Lord of Change will strike back against the Canoptic Wraith. Only 3 attacks base with the Staff of Tzeentch, since he's down to 1 wound. 3 attacks hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Of course, rolling triple 6s, so getting 3 hits. Strength 6 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Getting 3 wounds. 3-up invulnerable saves. Passing all 3. So now the Demon Prince will pile in and then fight against the Canoptic Wraith. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Wow! Getting 4 rerolls, luckily, and only 3 hits. Here's the 4 rerolls. Getting 3 more hits for 6 hits total. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s. Getting 5 wounds. 5 3-up invulnerable saves. And of course failing 1. So the Canoptic Wraith is finished off. So the Canoptic Wraith is finished off, and we will also have the Demon Prince of Tzeentch consolidate up to 3 inches towards the Annihilation Barge, the silver one, because that is the closest enemy unit. Just like so. But the Demon Prince is not within 3 inches of the center of the objective marker that the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is standing on. So going into the morale phase, this squad of Screamers needs to take a morale check, and they lost 5 models this turn. And they only have a leadership of 7, and they are not within 6 inches of a greater demon, which means if they roll a 3-up, the final model is removed. And the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have no command points left, so here's their morale check roll, and they roll a 5, so that final Screamer is killed off.
And so at the end of Necron's turn 2, the Necrons are currently holding 3 objective markers, which means that they get an extra 3 victory points. And so at the end of Necron's turn 2, we have a score of 6 victory points for the Necrons and 4 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch. Going into Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 2, a reminder that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch have 0 command points available, and the Necrons also have 0 command points available.
Going into the movement phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, turn 2, this squad of Pink Horrors will remain still. This squad of Pink Horrors will also remain still. This squad of Screamers is going to move up to 16 inches over in this direction to be closer to the Night Scythe. And they will finish their movement like so. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, who is down to 1 wound, will move up the board up to 6 inches. And he will finish his movement like so. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up to 12 inches towards the Night Scythe. And he will finish his movement like so. The Lord of Change with Baleful Sword and the Impossible Robe is going to move up to 12 inches up the board. And he will finish up right about there, about 3.5 inches away from the Annihilation Barge. This squad of Pink Horrors is going to move up to 6 inches up the board. And they will finish their movement like so. This Demon Prince of Tzeentch is going to move up to 12 inches up the board. And he will finish his movement right here, just over an inch away from the Overlord. And finally, Kairos Fateweaver is going to move about an inch up the board just to make sure that he's just over an inch away from the Necron Warriors. And he will finish like so. Going into the Psychic phase, we will begin with Kairos Fateweaver, who will attempt to manifest Gaze of Fate. And Gaze of Fate has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with a 9, thanks to the +2 from his Psychic test bonus. So the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will be able to reroll 1 dice for free later this turn. And we will come back to do 2 more Psychic powers from Kairos Fateweaver later in the Psychic phase, but right now we need to move over to the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword, who is going to attempt to manifest Infernal Gateway onto the Black Annihilation Barge. And this is important because if it is successfully manifested, it will affect all units within 3 inches of the Annihilation Barge, which is only the Silver Annihilation Barge, because the Lord of Change Change with Baleful Sword is 3.5 inches away, and the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is just over 3 inches away, so it will only affect the Black Annihilation Barge and the Silver Annihilation Barge, if it is successfully manifested. And so Infernal Gateway has a warp charge value of 8, and it does pass with an 8, thanks to the +2 from the Psychic Test bonus, so it will do D3 mortal wounds to both Annihilation Barges. Although the only one that we actually have to roll for is the Black Annihilation Barge, because the Silver one is down to just 1 wound. So D3 mortal wounds on the Black Annihilation Barge, and it will do 2. So the Silver Annihilation Barge will lose its 1 final wound and be killed off, and then the Black Annihilation Barge will fall from 8 starting wounds down to 6. And we will come back to the second psychic power from the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword later in the psychic phase. But first we need to resolve Smite from this Demon Prince of Tzeentch onto the Overlord. And Smite has a warp charge value of 5. And it passes with a 5. D3 mortal wounds, and it will do just 1 mortal wound. So the Overlord will fall from 5 starting wounds down to 4. Now this Demon Prince of Tzeentch will attempt to manifest Smite onto the Night Scythe. And Smite now has a warp charge value of 6, and it passes with an 11. So because of that, it will do D6 mortal wounds, and of course it will do 6 mortal wounds. So the Night Scythe will fall from 12 starting wounds down to 6. Next we will have the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery and the Everstav attempt to manifest Smite onto the Black Annihilation Barge, and then he will attempt to manifest Flickering Flames onto the squad of Pink Horrors with the Demonic Icon and the Instrument. Starting with Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 7. And it fails with a 5 thanks to the +1 from the Everstav. Now for Flickering Flames, which has a warp charge value of 5, and that passes with a 12. Which is also a Perils. And so unfortunately for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch, they are going to have to use their 1 reroll thanks to Gaze of Fate to reroll one of the 6s, because not only will this Perils kill off, it's guaranteed to kill off the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery since he only has 1 wound left, but that also means then if the Lord of Change dies, that the psychic power does not go off, and so there was no point in rolling a 12. So they will use their Gaze of Fate reroll and reroll the 6. And here's the reroll, and so now it just passes with a 7. So Flickering Flames will go off and Perils is avoided. And so now we can come back and resolve the Smite from the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword onto the Black Annihilation Bar, which now needs an 8, and it fails with a 6, thanks to the +2 from the Psychic Test bonus. So now we will have Kairos Fateweaver, and he will attempt to manifest Smite and Bolt of Change onto the squad of Necron warriors in front of him, and he will also attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. So beginning with Boon of Change, which has a warp charge value of 7, and it fails with a 6, with the +2 from the Psychic Test bonus. So now for Smite, which now has a warp charge value of 9, and that will pass with a 13, thanks to the +2 from the Psychic Test bonus. No Perils since he did not roll double 6s or double 1s, and so it will simply do D6 mortal wounds, and it will do 5 mortal wounds onto those warriors. So 5 warriors will be killed off, leaving 5 left alive in the squad. And I just remembered that because he had casted Gaze of Fate in the beginning of the turn, he's actually cast 3 with Smite, and so he cannot cast Bolt of Change. So that will actually be it for the psychic phase. So going into the shooting phase, this squad of 7 Pink Horrors, they will fire everything that they have into the squad of 5 Necron warriors, because they are all within 18-inch range. 14 shots with the Coruscating Flames, hitting on 4s with 1 cocked dice, so getting 10 hits and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting an 11th hit. Strength 3 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 5s, but thanks to Flickering Flames, actually wounding on 4s, because adding 1 to wound rolls. Getting 4 wounds. No AP, so 4 4-up armor saves. Passing 3 and a cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, passing all 4. This squad is completely within range to fire everything that they have into this Night Scythe. 20 shots hitting on 5s, getting 7 hits. Strength 3 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 6s, getting 1 wound. No AP, so 1 3-up armor save, which fails. So the Night Scythe will fall from 6 wounds down to 5. And now this Pink Horror Squad will fire everything that they have into the Night Scythe because they are also all within 18-inch range. 20 shots with Coruscating Flames, hitting on 5s, getting 6 hits and 1 cocked dice. And here's the cocked dice, getting a 7th hit. Strength 3 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 6s, failing to wound. Going into the assault phase, we have 6 charges to declare. First is this squad of 6 Screamers will charge into the Night Scythe. Second will be the Demon Prince of Tzeentch charging into the Night Scythe. Third, we have the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery charging into the Annihilation Barge. Fourth, we have the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword charging into the Annihilation Barge. Fifth, we have Kairos Fateweaver charging into the squad of 5 Necron warriors. And sixth, we have this Demon Prince of Tzeentch charging into just the Overlord. And we will resolve all of the charges in reverse order from what was just given. So starting with this Demon Prince and the Overlord has no Overwatch, and the Demon Prince is just over an inch away, so he will automatically make it in. And they are now locked in combat. So now we will do Kairos Fateweaver into the squad of 5 Necron warriors. 10 shots from the Overwatch, hitting on 6s, getting 3 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 4-up invulnerable save, which fails. So Kairos Fateweaver will fall from 7 wounds down to 6. So now here's the charge range for Kairos Fateweaver. He is going through a crater, so he has to subtract 2, which means he gets 1 inch of charge, but he is just over an inch away, so he will make it into combat. So Kairos Fateweaver is now within an inch and locked in combat with the warriors. Next, we will resolve the charge from the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword onto the Annihilation Barge. Starting with Overwatch and from the Gauss Cannon first. 3 shots, hitting on 6s, failing to hit. 8 shots from the Twin Tesla Destructor, hitting on 6s. Getting 1 hit, but thanks to Tesla, actually getting 3 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 7 means wounding on 4s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up invulnerable save, which passes. And here's the charge range, getting 4 inches, so he will make it in since he's only 3.5 inches away. And he is now locked in base to base, and also now within 3 inches of the center of that objective marker. Now we will resolve the charge from the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. No Overwatch anymore. And here's the charge. He is going through a crater, so subtracting 2 inches, which means he will have 5 inches of charge. And the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is now locked in combat with the Annihilation Barge. Next, we will resolve the Demon Prince's charge onto the Night Scythe. Beginning with Overwatch from the 2 Tesla Destructors, 8 shots hitting on 6s, getting 2 hits. But thanks to Tesla, actually getting 6 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, getting 5 wounds. No AP, so 5 3-up armor saves, passing all 5. And now for the charge range, getting 5 inches. So the Demon Prince will make it into combat. And now for the charge from the Screamers onto the Night Scythe. They're just over an inch away, so they will automatically make it in, but here's the charge range just in case, getting 4 inches. And so now they will all be locked in combat. And so now we will go into the fight phase, and we will begin with the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword onto the Annihilation Barge. But first, before we go any further, forgot to resolve whether or not the Silver Annihilation Barge would have exploded when it lost its final wound. So on a 6, and it would have. And so that actually means that all units around would take D3 mortal wounds, and unfortunately, the Silver Annihilation Barge was within 3 inches of the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. So the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is killed off. It loses its final wound, which means that Flickering Flames should not have gone off. Which actually means that the Gaze of Fate reroll is still available, because it was the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery that used that to save it from perils. So the Gaze of Fate reroll is still available. The Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is killed off. Luckily, Flickering Flames didn't do anything because the shooting attack from those pink horrors did nothing to the Necron warriors, so we don't have to redo anything there. But Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is killed off, and the Black Annihilation Barge has to take another D3 mortal wounds. So here's the D3. It will take another 2 mortal wounds. So the Lord of Change is killed off, and the Annihilation Barge will drop from 6 wounds down to 4, and because of that, I now have to redo the Boon of Change from Kairos, because obviously he couldn't have attempted to put it onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, and instead he would have attempted to put it onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. So we will go back to the Psychic phase for just a moment and attempt to manifest Boon of Change onto the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword. And actually instead, because it would be more beneficial all around, we will have Kairos Fateweaver attempt Bolt of Change onto the squad of Necron warriors in front of him, as if he had never attempted Boon of Change in the first place, because the only reason he attempted to cast Boon of Change was to try to keep the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery alive a little bit longer. But if the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery is already dead, it would be more beneficial all around to cast Bolt of Change onto the warriors. Now, in the spirit of things, I will keep the Psychic test roll that was rolled for Boon of Change onto the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery, which was a 3 and a 1. So obviously we will keep the 3, and then we will use the Gaze of Fate reroll that we got back to reroll the 1. So this very easily could end up doing nothing anyways, because it needs a warp charge value of 8, and so we need to roll at least a 3 on this reroll with the Psychic test bonus, which actually is only a Psychic test bonus of +1 anyways, because he's down to a second tier, so we actually need to roll a 4. And they do by rolling a 9, which actually becomes a 10. So Bolt of Change will go off, and I'm going to have to also double check to see if they would have made the other test, because I think I was claiming that Kairos Fateweaver had a Psychic test bonus of +2, but he's down to his second tier, so he only has a Psychic test bonus of +1. But let's first resolve how many mortal wounds this will cause, and it will cause D3, and so it'll just cause 1. So 1 extra warrior will be killed off. So I did go back and look at the footage, and both Gaze of Fate and Smite, which he successfully manifested, would have both successfully manifested even with only the +1 Psychic test bonus, and the Smite still would have done D6 mortal wounds instead of D3, because it would have been a 12 instead of a 13, and you only need more than 10 to get the D6. So both Gaze of Fate and Smite still would have gone off even with just the +1 to Psychic test bonus. So now that that's all been resolved and taken care of, now we can actually get into the fight phase for Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, and we first have to start with the Locus of Trickery, rolling 2 dice, take away the highest. So hit rolls of 4 will not count if they are coming from the Necrons against a Chaos Demon of Tzeentch character or friendly unit within 6 inches. So hit rolls of 4 will not count. And I just realized that I had forgotten to do that in Necron's turn 2 for the Canoptic Wraith, but it didn't matter because the Canoptic Wraith didn't do anything to the Lord of Change. But as I said a while ago, we're going to start with the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword onto the Annihilation Barge. 5 attacks base, and he will be attacking with the Baleful Sword. So 5 attacks hitting on 3s, because it subtracts 1 from hit rolls, and this is exactly why I've been using the Staff of Tzeentch for most of this group. Getting only 2 hits. That -1 to hit roll always strikes at the worst possible time. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, getting 2 wounds. It is -3 AP, however, so the Annihilation Barge will not get an armor save against either strike, and they do D6 damage apiece, and it will do 11 damage, and normally I'd be super happy about this, but because of quantum shielding, the Annihilation Barge is going to have a really good chance to just ignore all that damage, so this could be very problematic. So starting with the damage roll of a 6, on a 5 or lower, it ignores it, and it does, so it will not take the 6 damage. And then on the damage roll of a 5, on a 4 or lower, it will ignore it, and it ignores that one as well. So the Annihilation Barge will not take any damage. Next, we will do the Demon Prince onto the Night Scythe, placing all of his attacks with its 2 sets of Malefic Talons. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 5 hits and 2 rerolls. And here's the 2 rerolls, getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 3s, getting 6 wounds. -2 AP, so 6 5-up armor saves. Passing 2, but failing 4, and they are 2 damage apiece, and the Night Scythe does not have quantum shielding. So that is a total of 8 damage, and that will finish off the Night Scythe. Does it crash and burn on a 6? And it does not. So the Night Scythe is finished off. And the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will now consolidate up to 3 inches up the board. right to there. Next, we will have this Demon Prince of Tzeentch pile in and then fight against the Overlord. 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, getting 7 hits. Strength 7 versus Toughness 5 means wounding on 3s, getting 4 wounds. Minus 2 AP, so 4 up and vulnerable saves. Failing 3 at 2 damage apiece, and so that will finish off the Overlord. And so the Necron Overlord will be killed off for Slay the Warlord. And now the Demon Prince of Tzeentch will consolidate up to 3 inches up the board, and he will consolidate into combat with the Immortals. And he is now locked in combat. Finally, Kairos Fateweaver will pile in up to 3 inches. And he will pile in like so. He is now in base to base with at least 1 Necron Warrior model, but he is also now within 6 inches of the Demon Prince to give himself reroll hit rolls of 1. Now that Kairos is down to only 6 wounds, 3 attacks base with the Staff of Tomorrow, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, and only getting 2 hits. Strength 8 versus Toughness 4 means wounding on 2s, getting 1 wound. Minus 3 AP, so no armor save from the warrior. So 1 warrior will be killed off. And now the warriors will pile in and fight back. There are 3 warriors left. So 3 attacks total, hitting on 3s, but taking out 4s because of Locus of Trickery, so failing to hit. Now these Immortals will pile in and fight against the Demon Prince. And so all but 1 will be able to fight. So 9 Immortals total. 9 attacks, hitting on 3s, taking out the 4s, getting 5 hits. Strength 4 versus Toughness 6 means wounding on 5s, getting 1 wound. 1 3-up armor save, which passes. And now they will all consolidate in a little further, like so. Finally, the Annihilation Barge will fight back against the Lord of Change. 3 attacks, hitting on 6s, failing to hit. So going into the morale phase, this squad of Necron warriors lost 7 models this turn, and they have leadership of 10, so they will have to take a morale check. And here's their morale check roll. They roll a 2, so they will pass.
And so at the end of Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch are currently holding 3 objective markers because the one that the Lord of Change with Baleful Sword is holding is being contested by an Annihilation Barge. So they get plus 3 victory points thanks to the 3 objective markers, and they get plus 1 thanks to Slay the Warlord. So currently at the end of Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 2, we have a score of 8 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch and 6 victory points for the Necrons. Going into Necrons turn 3, a reminder that the Necrons have 0 command points available, and the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch also have 0 command points available.
So at this point, going into the Necrons turn 3 movement phase, the Necrons are going to concede the game, which means that the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch will achieve a major victory through concession, and we will have a final score of 13 victory points for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch and 8 victory points for the Necrons after kill points have been added in. Neither side achieved line breaker, and the Necrons killed off 2 full Chaos Demon of Tzeentch units, while the Chaos Demon of Tzeentch killed off 5 full Necron units. So now that it's been announced that we have a major victory for the Chaos Demons of Tzeentch through concession at the beginning of Necron's turn 3 with a final score of 13 victory points to 8 in Tzeentch's favor, I can go over 1 or 2 of my final thoughts on this game. First and foremost, this game was much closer than the previous matchup between these 2 armies, which I'm glad to have seen. It was much closer, actually lasted just over 2 full game turns, so that's a step in the right direction. But of course, we need to have a reason for a concession at this point, and the reason is that Tzeentch is about to run away with the victory. They currently have more than double the kill points that the Necrons do, and currently the Necrons are only holding 2 objective markers and contesting a 3rd, while Tzeentch holds 3 and is contesting a 4th. And considering the fact that the 1 objective marker being contested is being contested between an Annihilation Barge at half wounds and a Lord of Change at almost full wounds, Tzeentch is going to win that battle, which means that once they do, they will start getting twice as many victory points every single turn just from objective markers. And because so many more Necron units have been killed so far, the Necrons just don't have the firepower needed to bring the kill points back into balance. Unfortunately for the Necrons, their full squad of 10 immortals is locked in combat with the Demon Prince, who will tear them apart if they stay in combat. And so they kind of are going to have to fall back if they don't want to get torn apart, but that means they're not going to be able to do anything. And of course, there is a squad of warriors locked in combat with Kairos, and they might get some models back with reanimation, but they have the same issue. If they stay in combat, they're not going to be able to do anything, but if they fall back, they're not going to be able to do anything either. So 2 of the 8 remaining units on the table are just going to have to fall back and not do anything this turn. The Cryptek is not in a position to be able to help, since he only has 12-inch range with the Staff of Light, and he kind of needs to stay within 3 inches of the center of his objective marker in order to hold it and get that victory point. And even if he moved up, he wouldn't be able to do very much, not enough to bring the game back into competitiveness. And so pretty much the Necrons are going to have to rely on 2 Ghost Arcs, 1 squad of 10 Necron warriors, and 1 Annihilation Barge in an attempt to try to finish off Kairos Fate Weaver to get both the kill point and slay the Warlord. But if they fail to kill him, then that's a lot of wasted firepower, and even if they do, there's still a lot of Tzeentch models left on the table that can finish off the rest of the Necrons, including 2 fully healthy Demon Princes, which after the next movement phase will both be within good charge range of various Necron models. So it's just going to be a problem all around for the Necrons to stay in this game for more than 1 more full game turn. I would say that if we played out this game, the Necrons would be practically tabled by the end of Chaos Demons of Tzeentch turn 4. I think the biggest issue that the Necrons faced in this battle was the fact that the Canoptic Wraiths did absolutely nothing turn 1 when they charged into the Screamers. I think when they charged in and they weren't even able to do a single wound. 5 out of the 6 Wraiths were able to attack in that fight phase against the Screamers, which was 15 attacks, and they didn't do a single wound to the Screamers. And I think that set the tone for the rest of the battle. Because of course then those Wraiths were counterattacked pretty hard, and because they failed to wipe out the Screamers, that allowed Tzeentch to secure First Blood. The other issue that the Necrons had, and it was a strategic mistake on my part, but I did not carefully pre-measure well enough, did not realize that the second Night Scythe, the one that moved up in turn 1 to where this squad of Immortals and Demon Prince are sitting, I did not realize by glancing at it that it was going to be out of 24-inch range from the Lord of Change with Rod of Sorcery. And had the Necrons had that extra firepower from that Night Scythe, they might have been able to kill that Lord of Change turn 1 for First Blood. And that obviously would have made a huge difference on the rest of the battle, because that's 2 less psychic powers being cast every turn. That's essentially a 2 victory point swing in Necron's favor, because Tzeentch would lose First Blood and the Necrons would gain it. That would be an extra kill point right away. That'd be 1 less unit that could counterattack against the Wraiths, set off a whole chain reaction of things that went against the Necrons. And so that was unfortunately on me for placing the Night Scythe where I did. I should have been more careful about the placement of that and maybe putting him in a better position as to where he would have been able to shoot that Lord of Change, because I think that the combination of not killing off the Lord of Change for First Blood and those Wraiths not doing anything against the Screamers caused a complete collapse within the Necron army. I mean, we saw a lot of bad dice rolls from the Necrons today. So unfortunately, part of it was luck, but part of it was also strategy right at the beginning and failing to position the Night Scythe in such a way that he could do the most damage. But I really hope that you enjoyed this battle. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.